Welcome to Breast Implant Illness Hope for Healing. This is Cecily Henderson, your host. Thank you for joining us today. This podcast, I have a very special guest. Her journey is not the typical breast implant illness story, and her bravery and advocacy has touched many people's hearts, including mine. She has never had breast implants, but she has been affected by breast implant illness. Her name is Caren, and a lot of people know her as Caren, and she has a very important message to share with us today. Welcome, Caren.
Thank you.
You said that your mother had breast implants, correct?
My mother got double lumen breast implants in 1982. And the double lumen is both silicone and saline on the interior of the silicone shell. So she got those in 1982. I was conceived in 1984, born in 1985. Um, they didn't really think anything was wrong with me in the beginning. I did go to the doctor a lot. I had a lot of upper respiratory infections and a lot of UTIs and um, unusual rashes. My mom was concerned at one point because my foot was turning out. Um, but yeah, they didn't think anything was wrong until in 1991, I believe, my mom heard about everything going on with the breast implants.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, they were calling it silicone disease.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so she actually flew down to Tampa, Florida, where there was a rheumatologist who was specializing in the silicone disease. And when she talked to him, she asked, what about my children that I breastfed and I had? And he was like, there's very little research done on the women and absolutely nothing done on the children. It, my mom talked to the FDA a lot, and she would be like, what's going on with these children? Can you do tests? And she actually talked to a woman who was doing tests on the women, and she was like, you should be happy that they're doing tests on the women. And they're like, you
Gosh,
can't expect a test on the women to roll over to the children
no.
because it's completely different because we're being formed in the presence of these chemicals. If you go on the FDA website right now, it says, no silicon has been found in breast milk. And silicon and silicone are very different substances.
Right.
And it says that, some mothers have um, claimed that their children are sick. But whenever you have a number of children getting sick, it needs to be studied, it needs to be warned about, and they're just not doing enough.
No, they're not. I agree. That's why I had to have you on the podcast so we can get this word out.
Yeah.
Now I know that your mother had didn't she testify before the Food and Drug Administration in
Yes.
2000? Okay,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that.
And we testified, me and her went up and testified. And I actually read a letter that I wrote to Oprah because I had seen a doctor claiming that breastfeeding your children was safe on the show. And so I wrote Oprah, and what I got back was a letter from the legal department.
Oh,
And but yeah, so we
gosh.
went and we testified, and then we flew home. And then the next month, we flew to Las Vegas to do another interview. And then we flew back home. And then the next month, she killed herself. Um, and it's very hard to.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you,
I'm
thank
sorry.
you. It's difficult for me most of all because I have dealt with depression and suicidal ideation since I was 10. Because I knew that my life would never be what everybody else's was. And she would tell me time and time again that I could never commit suicide because it was wrong and that mom, dad would always take care of me. And so that's why it's very difficult for me to even imagine that she would take that drastic of a step.
Yeah.
And she was actually in contact with the FDA the month she killed herself.
It hit my heart so hard when you told me that being young and, you know, well, how old were you when your mother passed
I
away?
was 15.
15?
Yeah,
Gosh, it's so young.
yeah,
The just everything that was going on, as far as your growth, and then you had these complications, illnesses on
yes,
top of that you were
yeah.
dealing with.
Mhm.
I mean, you are such a strong woman to go through all of that and then advocating. Just thank you for doing what you're doing. You
Thank
are
you.
amazing woman.
I am trying to I'm trying to help the kids that are going through this now, because I want them to know that they're not alone. And yes, this terrible thing has happened. And my mom, when she killed herself, she didn't even know, like, she didn't have the evidence that we had after she died. Because after she died, her like organs and all of that was sent to a forensic toxicologist, and they found platinum in her brain, in her lungs, and her heart. And
My gosh.
yeah, when I came back into the breast implant things, I did a 5 strands test to see how my body interacts with heavy metals.
Hmm.
And platinum was one that my body does not get rid of. And so when I was 15, I had the amount of platinum in my body that someone who had worked, um, for years on highways or with the production of platinum. And I didn't have any of those exposures. And so my exposure was from my mother's breast implants, because the platinum is used as a catalyst in the shell.
Right.
And so, if that can get to the fetus, then any other number of chemicals and heavy metals that are used can get to the fetus as well.
Yeah, that is 100% correct.
Hmm.
And I know I just did a podcast on the toxicology, right? So the FDA recommends toxicological testing on breast
Do
implants
they?
because of the platinum catalyst.
Right.
And do you think surgeons do that? I have
Don't think so.
never heard of any
I
surgeon,
haven't either.
yeah, testing before they implant breast, do breast surgery. And but the FDA just kind of passes it off to the
Right.
surgeon as their responsibility,
Right.
so that they don't have to take part in that, which is wrong. It's
Yep.
totally wrong. And it talks about these catalysts. It
Yep.
talks about reproductive. It talks about teratogenicity, which is the
Yes.
reproduction of women, and that they need to do testing on this.
Right.
Why is nobody talking about this?
I don't know. I don't know. In 2001, there was a citizens petition sent to the FDA to try to get them to warn about the children, about the dangers to the women. And they, because there were institutes like the Mayo Clinic and Harvard that did studies saying that they were fine. Everybody took that as gospel.
Yeah.
And they didn't listen to the thousands of other studies being
Mm.
done that were saying this is not good.
Yeah. And that's wrong.
It's very
The
wrong.
Yeah, they and I think we have that even today, because I find studies all the time.
I follow or not follow people. I did follow people that on social media that went and got breast implants. And I would do videos like, are these people not listening to the women that are getting sick? And but I know in the 90s, they did the same thing. They would go on talk shows, and women would be discussing everything going wrong with the implants, and there would be someone on the show getting implants and listening to these women telling their stories and decide on implants anyway. It's unfortunate that every woman's story is not given enough credibility.
Yeah.
Because my mom said this at the FDA hearing, or like right after we were interviewed by CNN. She's like, how many women and children have to stand up and say that this like makes us sick? Because we're not anecdotal evidence. There were
Yeah.
400,000 women in the Dow Corning settlement in
Gosh.
the 90s.
Wow.
And don't even get me started on that settlement. It was terrible. It was that class action was
Gosh.
horrible, horrible. Um, the children could be opt-in. I was lucky because my mom never trusted them.
Mhm.
Um, and the children didn't get anything.